Hi there, it's Llarold.
And Akusah.
And today we're going to talk about island expeditions. These were just added to the alpha within the last couple of days, and we've run a bunch of them.
Yeah, I think we've run something like 10. So for the purpose of the alpha, they scaled us to whatever gear somebody who's 120 would be reasonably wearing, whatever that means. I don't know.
Like day one. You just hit 120, you're wearing all quest greens, boom, there you go, let's throw you right into this island expedition scenario.
Definitely missing our legendaries. It was nice that there's a vendor for some of the legendaries on the alpha, or no, all of the legendaries on the alpha, but you can only wear one because you don't have your table, your class hall completed. So you don't have access to wearing two. So it's like, what's your favorite one right now? These scenarios, they don't have like objectives that you complete as you progress through the scenario like you had in Mists of Pandaria. It isn't like you need to do this and then you can move on and do this and then it unlocks this boss or whatever.
It's not a story. You're thrown into an island, just randomly on the side of it, wherever, and you just kind of want to go out and kill stuff, or gather stuff, or do what you do.
And the purpose on the island, your objective, is to collect Azerite. And so you're faced off with 3 players from the opposing faction, or 3 NPCs of the opposing faction. Right now you can only test the PvE version, so some teams seemed like they were better than others.
There was some sort of like Frost Holy Paladin, Prot Paladin thing who was also charging. It was like a weird like Frost Mage Warrior Paladin. And then 2 crazy. Frost Mages at the same and then 2 Frost Mages with him. And then there was the one that was like Hunter, Rogue, and Blood Death Knight. Some weird comps for sure.
Not only that, but the NPCs kept like running around and teleporting around and chasing other players in your group or running away from you while you were trying to kill them, which was super irritating.
Yeah, and that was something that Blizzard talked about a lot when they were advertising this at BlizzCon, that they were doing some sort of new AI for these guys that was supposed to simulate players, and they've got the jumping around in circles and constantly casting instant spells. They got that down pat. So they got a good, jumping and ice lancing, jumping and moon firing type of deal going. But every enemy NPC does that the whole time. So it gets a little weird. It doesn't feel finished. It feels a little rudimentary.
So the way that you get to the scenario is right now they have it set up in Zuldazar Harbor. You go to an NPC and you talk to him and you tell him you want to queue by yourself or with your party for the scenario. Expeditions as they're called. And he's right next to a ship, so I was kind of wondering if in the future there would be like an actual ship that you get on and take there, if it would be sort of like a flight path sort of deal that you queue for. And I also kind of wondered if there's going to be an actual cutscene of like taking the ship there, or if it would just be like the Zeppelin where you just go like a little ways and then you see a loading screen and then you go like a little bit ways further and then you're at the island, so like maybe approaching the island. But as it stands right now, it's you queue, you accept the queue, you wait through a loading screen, and then you're there. You've already landed on the island and you're like ready to go.
Yeah, see, I'm more of a lazy person. I just want to hit my I key and just queue up for it like a random dungeon.
Yeah, me too.
But I think if they added all of that thematic goodness to it, I think I could accept having to go to a specific place to queue for this instance content. If I got a whole bunch of cool flavor along with it, I think that would be alright, but otherwise I'm fine with just opening up a dungeon queue and just, clicking a button and then bazam, scenario time. Island expedition time.
And it's also not right outside the capital or like the Horde hub. You would have to take a flight path to the harbor and then go to the table and use it to go to the expedition, which maybe that's what they had in mind. Maybe that's why they're expeditions and not, like a scenario you queue for. I don't know.
I guess that makes sense, but I'd love to not add 5 minutes of startup time to a 15-minute scenario.
Well, you already, when you had challenge modes, right, you had to go to the place to go do it. You couldn't just queue for it. So that's why I'm worried that you're going to have to go to this table every time you want to do one of these expeditions. But, if that's what it is, that's what it is. People will go to the table. So the way that you collect the Azerite is you have to kill monsters, which are all worth a certain value of Azerite. They actually have a buff right now that tells you how much Azerite they're worth. I was wondering if that buff is just something for the alpha to help you complete the scenario, or if it's something that will be there in live.
I kind of hope it's something that's there in live.
Me too.
It is important information to know, this mob is worth
It is, but in
7
Mythic
Azerite.
Dungeons, you don't have, like, there are add-ons that tell you now, but the actual Blizzard UI doesn't say, like, oh yeah, kill these Murlocs, they're worth X%. It doesn't tell you that, so I'm kind of curious if these scenarios will be the same way.
That is a good point. I think because the mobs are worth more Azerite over time, I think it would make sense for Blizzard to leave that information in the base UI. Because Murlocs don't become worth more in a Mythic Plus, I think.
Right.
That's probably the one justification for putting it into the default UI.
Oh, and I forgot to mention that the Alliance, they queue at Borealis Harbor, which is near the green ship. We're near a red ship, they're near a green ship. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, why not a blue ship? They're Alliance, right?
Yeah, I have no idea. I didn't choose the colors of the ships. Blame someone at Blizzard. So, when you're going around the island, other than just killing everything, which, by the way, it's really important that your group stays together, especially if you're doing it on the alpha. Maybe once you're doing it on live and everyone has more gear, or they're geared to the teeth later on, or whatever it might be, maybe it's okay to split up if you have 3 DPS or a tank and 2 DPS or something like that, but right now, you need to stick together. Also, having a healer was really beneficial for us, just because of the AoEs going on, which of course you don't know what they are because they're brand new monsters to you. Or just surprising ground effects that for some reason do over half of your health pool that you can barely see. Of course, it's alpha, so I'm sure that will change in the future, but...
Yeah, but some of those crabs were terrifying, and some of those spiders, I remember one spot in particular where you're full health, a spider turns and throws a pretty hard to see poison cone at you, and then suddenly you're gone. It's oh, well, okay then. I didn't realize I had 1 second. Yeah, 1 second to move or I get destroyed. All right then.
When you're wandering around the island, there are little NPC guys that might need your help, or a chest or a clam that needs to be unlocked. Locking clams, that's a new thing.
Yeah, who knows?
And so you collect shovels, torches, keys, and when you interact with them, you get Azerite for your trouble. And it's actually pretty substantial for the interaction. You get about 200, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Pretty much every guy that we'd guys trapped in a tangling vine, you burn them out with some torch that you grabbed. Boom, 200 Azerite. Pretty sweet.
Yeah, especially since killing something worth 200 Azerite will take you a lot longer than that.
Yes, it will. I think, it's kind of counterbalanced by the fact that, I think the first time we picked up one of these things, there was, a guy in a cage, and then, 4 feet away there was a key, and I was like, I guess you pick up the key and use it to open the cage, and then suddenly we got 200 Azerite for it. But some of them, I've grabbed a shovel on one side of the island, and then forgotten that I even had it, and then 4 minutes later we're on the other side of the island and there's some goblin underneath some sand, and I guess I'll click on it. Oh, that's what the shovel was for. I forgot I even had it. I think if there were any criticism I were to offer of things that aren't actually bugged, I think that's probably the biggest one, because we sort of stumbled on that and we really had no idea what was going on, just sort of clicked stuff at random and figured it out. Because we're so smart.
But, we figured it out.
But there wasn't any sort of tutorial or pick up keys to unlock
people
things.
Figure it out. There's a lot of things that there's no tutorial for. Look at the mage tower challenges or whatever. There's no tutorial for those. Just online guides. People figured them out. Obviously they wrote the guides.
Fair enough. Okay, I have no criticism of this event at all.
Okay.
None.
Okay. Overall, I think these took us 15 to 20 minutes, depending on what our group composition was and what the third person was doing. We actually lucked out one time and got someone really, really great in our group, and that was our fastest run. What was that one, 12 minutes?
I think it actually clocked in at like exactly 10 minutes. I was playing a bear, they were playing a demon hunter, and I don't remember if you were Shadow or Holy. Yeah, you were Holy.
I was Shadow when we joined, but then both of you guys were taking so much damage. I was like, I think that if I switch to healer, we could pull even more, and you guys can AoE like more effectively and not have to worry about dying. And
you were right.
You. Yeah, it went really fast, and then we basically just bulldozed the island. I forgot to mention that since you're fighting the Alliance to get the most Azerite first, if
or
they
Horde
tag,
if you're for some reason an Alliance person.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, those guys. If the opposing faction tags a monster before you, and it's like one of the big elementals on the shore that spawn, or just a big crab on the shore or whatever, if you kill it, you give them the Azerite if it's still tagged to them.
You know, that was something that was a little buggy, because like when we had that, we had somewhere we killed all of them off and then we got the tag, and we had some situations where we killed all of them off and they still had the tag.
One thing I found really great about the island is that things respawn pretty quickly, and there's always stuff to fight, but you might accidentally run into the opposing faction again. And in PvP, I'm sure that, like, a lot of people would be excited to run into the other faction again to get their Azerite faster by killing enemy players. But if you're PvEing and you run into the opposing faction NPCs, yeah, they're worth a lot of Azerite, but they are very dangerous. And I don't know if they're just dangerous because of your gear being scaled way down, or if it's because they have crazy abilities, like you had mentioned. You know, you had a paladin who was doing like a frost thing and a charge thing, and he was also like healing himself, and you know, is this guy invincible? Is he ever going to die? And then he was like running around.
Yeah.
He was really crazy NPC. He was like kind of like fighting a raid boss, honestly, and then also was teleporting around.
All of the NPCs that we're fighting against are bloodthirsty. When they die, it resets their value, so like there's no advantage to camping their spawn, and you know, sure, they'll sit and generate value pretty quickly as they're, you know, once they're alive again, but if you kill them and you get 250, that's great. If you kill them another 30 seconds later and you get like 20, like what good is that? I don't want to waste the time killing these guys. I want to go kill tigers or whatever. That's not so annoying.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure that there's a particular strategy for doing these expeditions yet, but there probably will be eventually, because there is a limited set of monsters that are going to spawn, and there's a limited set of NPCs that you're going to fight against, and you know, eventually I feel like people will be like, oh, did we get the rogue, the paladin, and the mage this time, or you know, whatever, and that'll kind of like determine how you run about the island. And right now you can change talents in there, so I'm guessing that you'll probably be able to do that on live as well.
That would make sense if they're treated more or less like a dungeon count, you know, kind of content.
Mm-hmm.
You may not be able to change talents in the PvP version. I think that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can change specs too, because like I had started Shadow and switched over to heals, and I had started heals and switched over to Shadow, so I figure as long as you can do that, you know, because you never know what you're going to get if you're queuing by yourself. You don't know what your other players are going to be. You'd have to figure it out pretty quickly, though, because you're racing against the other faction to get things done.
Yeah, but that would suck to, like, queue in as a Resto Druid and you got a Resto Shaman and a Resto Monk in your group. Like, yeah, nothing's going to die there. Yeah, Resto Monk, yep.
Oh, okay.
They're new.
So, speaking of things that don't exist or shouldn't exist... There's quite a few bugs with these expeditions. We're not entirely sure what is supposed to be there instead of the bug, or how it's supposed to function instead of the way it's bugged right now, but there are a few things that definitely don't seem like they're how it's intended. For one, I would say the Azerite values of the things are not what the target says they are.
We killed rares and got like 345 Azerite, even though the tooltip said 250. So those two numbers aren't the same, so what's going on there? Same with elites. I think their cap is like 175 or 125 or something, and we were getting, you know, like 250, 245. Okay, this isn't what you said it would be, but it's more, so I'm definitely not complaining.
So there's elementals that spawn on the shore, and they're worth a lot more Azerite than other stuff. And so when you go to interact with them, the scenery, the atmosphere changes quite rapidly, And you basically play in the game of daytime, nighttime, daytime, nighttime. Like, just suddenly a different sky color out of nowhere. Nothing gradual about it.
I think it's probably supposed to be smoother. I wouldn't be surprised if it's
It was
something
actually
that
funny,
gets
though.
fixed, but
It was one of the more funny things that happened, though. We were just like, oh, it's suddenly dark now. And then once you do hit 6,000, right now, it's just, thanks for helping us test the alpha. We appreciate it, you know, whatever. There's a banner that comes up and says that. But in the future, like, will there be, like, a chest that you have to go loot to get rewards where you just automatically get a reward? Is the reward going to be something that is not a piece of gear and is just Azerite and gold, or Azerite and some other token? We have no idea. So overall, what do you think of these?
I love them. I think they're great. I liked scenarios. I was that weirdo in Miss Pandaria who really liked scenarios. I just like the idea of, like, quick, easy queues where everyone can be thrown into a group and kind of go randomly run around and do stuff. What I didn't like about Miss Pandaria scenarios was basically, because they're story-driven, after you've done the story part 3 or 4 times, pretty boring. Unless there's a great reward, what's the point? So I hope that these have a great reward, but because they're not scripted, I really like it a lot. You basically run around and kill stuff. I love killing. It's a perfect marriage.
These are sort of like Diablo rifts. And you're just trying to reach 6,000 before someone else reaches 6,000 in their rift. You know, like everything else, if it becomes something that we need to do weekly to reach a cap of Azerite or whatever, it will become a chore. They are fun right now. I would need to see a lot more islands and a lot more different configurations in order to say that they're going to be really fun and interesting for me.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we haven't touched on this, because it hasn't really been doubled down on by Blizzard, is when they first announced them at BlizzCon, they did say there were going to be 3 difficulties: normal, heroic, mythic, and then I guess the 4th difficulty being PvP. We're only testing the normal right now.
With the gear that we're wearing, it feels like a mythic. With the way that things are hitting people.
I think that's fair. Right, basically we're all underpowered at this point, which is fine. It was slightly challenging while we're underpowered. Okay, that probably means it'll feel good, you know, once everything's tuned correctly.
Yeah, I think normal will probably be a breeze as long as you have 3 people that are, you know, confident in their class and can play well with a group. I think you'll be fine. Heroic, I think will be, you know, again, just like heroics when you gear up for them in the dungeon queue. Like, I feel like it'll be real easy if you've got people that know what they're doing and are ready for a new mechanic to be thrown at them. And, you know, same for Mythic. Obviously, Mythic is probably going to be a group that maybe that's what the table's for, the Mythic version. That if it's Mythic, you have to go to the table.
Hey, there we go.
You have to go to Mythic dungeons.
Yeah, there you go. I think we just figured it out.
I'm okay with that.
Man, we're smart.
I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with having to go there every single time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest question marks for me still at this point are just, what's the reward? And will we see new and special things in Heroic and Mythic? And what are they?
No idea. Alright, I think that's pretty much everything about these expeditions. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on Twitter at WoW at Night. Bye!
Bye!